And the higher self has many incarnations. There are many people who are part of that, the many experiences, life experiences that are part of that. And we just don't have a real notion of how many there are, but it is vast, and we then will bring those together when we mature, as we go to the next plane of life and go to the next levels of our understanding. But it is, as you say, we are experiencing just a very small part of who we are when we're on the earth plane.
So there I was reading, I've read hundreds of these early 20th century accounts, and it was early on pretty clear to me that time was different there, and I found that really sort of distressing in a way, because you think everything will be synced up. It seems that it's when you first leave the earth, you seem to be much more sort of correlating your life in what we call the afterlife, which is real life. With Earth time, you're sort of more synced, but you get farther and farther away, and you're less and less synced. And there seems to be the option of just opting out of it, too. Do you know any more about how it works, how time works there? It's different for each person. It's subjective. We think it up, and that's what it is, or how does it work?
Yeah, but we do have the same time together because we're in a consensual universe. We are in a participatory universe. In other words, we're creating the reality together.
Yes.
The fact we create it together means we want to have the experiences in sync. And so our minds, which are one with the source, with the creative mind, then will create the reality that we experience. And that reality has this sense of time, of things changing. Really, when we talk about time, what we're talking about is experiences. So that we have a long string of experiences that happen, and we call those experiences on the earth plane. And we say we bring those out of memory. And we say they're stored, but they're not stored. They're simply accessible.
Yes.
They're not stored in the brain. The mind is not in the brain at all. But then we can access those experiences and say, well, yeah, when I was 10 years old, this happened. And when I was 20 years old, this happened. So we can access those memories, but those memories then exist. They have their own life. And there are some people who are able to remember every event in their life. Mary Lou Renner, for instance, the movie star, is able to remember every event that happened in her life. And of course, you couldn't do that if they were all stored in the brain. But what happens is that these memories, that we have, these experiences that we have, then are accessible by us, and they're accessible by other people. Psychics, for instance, can access them. And so we take those with us. And we have a pile of experiences that we call the past. And those are just experiences we've had on the earth plane.
Yes.
And a pile of experiences that are the future. And those will come, and we already have those are in shape already, and we can look at those. So it's possible, and I can do that. I'm able to see the future by sitting down and doing what's a form of remote viewing and being able to see the future, because the future is there. It's available to us. When Einstein wrote his first paper, when he was talking about the special theory of relativity, Minkowski, who was his teacher, said, you know what you're talking about space and time together. It's really space-time. He said, sure enough, that's what it is.
Yes.
Space-time then is really like, instead of thinking of the arrow of time, past, present, and future, it really is like a loaf. It's really like a block. And in that block, then, you were born over in one corner, and then your life, you are going to die in another corner, and you are having all these experiences. They're in there, but they're in the future and the past. So all of these are in that block. You have to go out and get them.
There are people driving right now or in the chat room or somewhere who are saying, wait a minute, you can see the future? Talk a little bit more about that, because you might be creeping some people out right now.
Sure. The future is accessible to us, so we can see the future, and I'll tell you how to do that in just a minute. But what you can do is you can access something by just intending to access it, and then what you do is you'll get the picture of what the future could be, but it's only from the point of view now. It's like the waves that are coming in, and if you look at a wave that's way out in the ocean, it's one form, but by the time it gets to you, it may have changed somewhat, but you can see it out out there in the ocean, and that's the wave that's going to be coming. So we can see the future, and that's what can come, but it can be changed. And that future, it can be changed by who we are and what we are now. Who we are and what we are and what we're doing influences both the past, it influences who we were, and it influences the future, it influences who we will be. So that we're creating this milieu, this reality in the past, in the present, in the future, every moment when we're doing this. So to be able to see the future, all you have to do is to sit down quietly and intend to find something. I've done this when I was going to go to a meeting, for instance, and I wanted to see who was going to be at the meeting. And so I sat down quietly about 2 hours before the meeting, before I even traveled out to the place, and just thought about it and envisioned what it would be like to be in that room. So then I brought myself into that room, and I'm thinking, I'm in that room, and I walk through the door, and I sit down, and there are people there, and there are desks, and there is a window, and I'm putting myself into the room. And after I put myself into the room, then I look around and see who's there. And sure enough, there were two ladies there. So that meant I was going to meet with two ladies. But the strange thing was there was a face of a lady that was up above the two ladies, just kind of out in a cloud. And I couldn't figure out what that meant, but we had the meeting then, and as I went in and sat down, then two ladies came in just as I had envisioned. And about halfway through the meeting, then they had a conference call with a third lady.
Oh.
And I thought her name was Hilda. That came to me, but it wasn't. It was Myrna, but that was close.
Pretty close.
Anybody can do that just by putting yourself in the situation. Just think about what it would be like to be in that area when you're relaxed, and after a while, then look at it and see what you see there, and you'll be able to see what the future will be.
Now, people are saying, well, wait a minute. I thought we had free will. What if we do something drastic that changes things? Now, if that happens, the future will change, right? It's just basically a probability about the future.
Yeah,
it's not certain.
No. And what we're doing is we're looking at that wave that's way out there in the ocean. And when it gets to us, then it can change. We can change the future. And we can change the future, and we can change the past. So, and studies have done, there's been research that was done on cardiac care patients. We know that we can send healing thoughts to people. And if we send it to an ICU unit, for instance, then the people there they will have less medication, less pain. They'll be discharged earlier. So that this is pretty standard. We know that this is true. So they did a study in which they divided up the people in a cardiac ICU unit, and they had the control group that they did not send healing thoughts to, and they had the other group, the experimental group, they sent the healing thoughts to. And they did the study, and after the study, they found out, sure enough, the ones they sent those healing thoughts to were healed more quickly. They had less intubation, they had less medication, less pain, and so that was demonstrated. We knew that would be happening, but the groups that were chosen were from an IC unit that existed 12 years ago.
Yes.
Those groups. Mm-hmm.
Everyone, get your mind around this. They have records about people who were in the ICU a dozen years ago. And they are sending intentions to some of these people who have already been healed and they're already out in the world. And when they go back and look, they find that those that had been prayed over or thought about or whatever the process was had done better in the past. They affected the past that directly. And that's not the only, there are a number of people who have done experiments like that, and that's how it always works. Isn't that incredible?
Yeah, that's common now, and other experiments have been done. We know that we can influence, for instance, the Geiger counter clicks, the number of clicks that would come out of one ear or in one ear or another when people had headphones on, and they were from different Geiger counters. And so then you can influence it by saying, I'd like to have more clicks out of the left ear. And sure enough, there will be a small number, but it's significant, of more clicks that come out of the left ear, that you can hear them in the left ear. Otherwise, then it's just 50-50 between the two of them. So what they've done is done experiments in which they have recorded the clicks and then listened to them a year later. And when they listened to them a year later, the person had the headphones on. They said, I'd like to hear more clicks out of the left ear.
Oh, no, really?
Sure enough, got more clicks out of the left ear, even though it was recorded a year ago.
I love it. this is really wonderful, the fact that we're learning so much about our own minds and their powers. Now let's talk about something which you may be wondering about. What about reincarnation? Do we live many lives? As Craig said, maybe many of those lives are happening at the same time. Well, indeed, that's true. One of the implications of the fact that there's no objective time is that all our lives reportedly are being lived at the same time. Doesn't that boggle you, Craig?
Yeah, and then it is true. And our higher selves then have those incarnations. It isn't that we come back as somebody else. I can't come back as a lady Eskimo with 13 children, living in 1024 Earth year. That's just not possible. If I came back as that woman, I wouldn't be Craig. So it
right.
wouldn't be possible. But what actually happens, we know now, is that there are incarnations that the higher self has, and the higher self has many, many of these incarnations, and they are all part of who we are. So that we then are learning from their experiences. We're learning from the experiences of that Eskimo woman, but we're keeping our identity so that when we then drop off the body and we stop using the body, we continue as the individuals we are. There's in the book that by Borgia, the World Unseen. And I recommend that book for anybody, The World Unseen. In Borgia has the account of a person who had been in the next plane of life in what's called Summerland by some. He was on the next plane of life for 1,000 years, but he was still his individual. He was still the same person.
Yes.
And others have come through. Confucius has come through, people from the Roman Empire who've come through, and they are the same people whom they were then, and they don't reincarnate. Other parts of the higher self incarnate, and then when they have their experiences, their life experiences, then they share them all. We will all come together, and that's when we'll learn from them, from each other. But we don't ourselves change. We don't come back and incarnate ourselves. We stay the individuals whom we are.
One of the things that's an interesting implication of all of this is that our lives influence the lives of others who are part of our higher mind. So, for example, if you develop a fear of heights, you can go to someone like Dr. Brian Weiss. He can regress you to a previous, in terms of earth time, lifetime, and find the place where someone pushed you off a cliff. Well, as soon as you remember that time, your fear disappears. I've had this happen to me, so I know it works. But then he got curious when he couldn't find a source in a lineal past life, so he started progressing people to future lives, and he sometimes found the cause of their present life problem in that future life. Think about that. So we're talking future only in terms of the linear Earth time. In reality, of course, it's all happening at once. But that's one of the implications of the fact that there is no time. Our past lives, quote, and future lives, quote, are influencing our present lives and influencing one another.
Yeah, and we are going to be able to have access to all of those. So we have access to all those memories. We have access to all those personalities. So the personality of one of the other incarnations then can affect who we are, and then we can regress back into that life, and we can experience it because it is having an effect on us now. So those lives that are in our higher self are part of who we are now, but certainly now when we come onto the earth plane, then we go through the process of forgetting. We have to play by the rules. We have to have a suspension of belief, of understanding. And so we then become the personality whom we are during this individuation on the earth plane. And when we do that, then we don't have access to those other lives, the other incarnations, but sometimes they will leak through and they can affect us, and we can have that experience of having what we call a reincarnation experience, but it really is the memory of one of those other lives that we've had that are part of who the higher self is now. And then we can take care of the difficulty that we have because we can let go of that. And that's what a regression does. A regression takes you into it and allows you to experience whatever it was that was bothering you and in a past life, and then let go of it.
All right, let's do a little thought experiment. This is something I've been playing with. It seems to me quite possible that because that's true in our individual lives, past and future and present are influencing one another, it seems to be equally possible that historic periods at past and present and future are also influencing one another. Sort of the groups of people living at those times are influencing one another. So, for example, we had a horrendous, really, in terms of death and horror and